Hey guys, this is Zlewikk. We are only 2 weeks away from EU5 being published. I am already allowed to start recording my videos, and on the 31st of October I'll be able to publish pre-release video on the Ottomans, where I'm gonna go fully all in there, showing all of you their content. But today it's still time of AAR, so I can talk to you about my campaign, and that's gonna be Florence into Tuscany into Italy campaign. A note, just a few days ago they released that final patch before EU5 release, so that campaign is obviously on a patch just before that. Florence by itself has 35 dynamic historical events and 13 other pieces of content, including 11 advances and 2 privileges. It has another 2 advances for being Tuscan culture, another 1 for being Italian culture. Then you also receive, because you're Italian, 1 additional building and 1 card interaction, which is asked to become a free city. The Florence itself looks like here. They have 312,000 pops across 5 locations, and it's actually smaller than on the screen that I'm showing you. The locations are, I think, a bit different. Yes, so it has Arezzo, Florence, Poggibonsi, 3, Borgo San Lorenzo, and Mangona. These are the locations that actually Florence starts with. So that's an old dev diary, so it's a bit different. So they don't have Modigliana and Pistoia at the start of the game. You start with 1 guarantee form, which is called Signora, that gives you reduced crown power, about 10%, replace cabinet cost is cheaper, you get 10% improved relations, and in general Signora election is really nice. I think it's one of the nicest that they've seen so far. Every few years you can choose the new ruler, and it is from 5 different people that you have on the court. That could be, for example, someone in your cabinet, and you see their stats, so you can just choose the best ones for you. So if your cabinet is really healthy, if you have high stats there, you have a big and good choice. And you also have an option to re-elect current ruler at the cost of 10 legitimacy, Republican tradition. The issue is on that patch when I played, it wasn't working properly, because even when I chose to re-elect a ruler and I lost 10 legitimacy, after a month tick I got again election. So I couldn't really keep the existing ruler. But what is good, when I change the ruler, and then there's the next election, and that previous ruler is still alive, you can still get him again. So you pretty much have all the time really good stats of rulers. Second guarantee form that I chose was Sortition, that was increasing the power of the burghers, but gave me 5% tax efficiency. You also have 2 unique privileges at the start. One is for the patricians, so the nobility, called Signora Council, which is decreasing tax for the nobles, but gives you stability decay, so you can get your stability higher faster, and you can keep it higher at a lower cost. But then also for the burghers you've got Florence Guilds, which gives you reducing inflation and minus 1% of interest. You also start with 2 unique advances for Florence. One is called Fiorino d'Oro, so their coin, which gives you 10% tax efficiency and minus 1% court cost, as well as Arte della Lana, which gives you 10% fine cloth output. Then you also have 5 advances from the fact that you're Catholic, the same as in my Danish AAR if you watch this. So it's monthly diplomat, monthly army tradition, cultural tradition, and stab investment. Early game is relatively easy. As you see, you are surrounded by small nations that are at smaller power than you. Like the only bigger one will be Pope, that is wherever I'm standing. On the north you have Genoa here. There's Verona up on the north, and Venice, as well as Milan, but all of these guys are outside of your starting area. So I can really nicely expand the area, being the strongest. So my first goal was to go and defeat Pisa, because it was a city of Pisa to be taken over, but also coastal provinces. And in the meantime I also did manage to subjugate, I think, Città di Castello. Diplomatically, I made them my subject. Once you conquer Pisa, you also get a dynamic historic event to get Prato as just for free. This is not a subject that they wanted, even though it's a similar color, it's a standing in the standing province. And that's, I think, my main problem with dynamic historical events, because they're nice replacement for mission trees, but you don't know when and what the dynamic historical events trigger. So I hope at one point it will be added as a list. If not, I'll end up probably using EU5 Wiki to just be aware of this event, just like I was using EU4 Wiki. These are also the starting stats. So you have, you see just a few locations, 14 base stacks, for income minus to balance, but you very fast, very easily get it higher, especially that you have 3 cabinet members. So I was using 1 to constantly increase control over the provinces, so I was keeping it at probably average of 90-ish. Again, the control is dropping slower when you're increasing it via this interaction. And then for my other 2 cabinet members, another one was helping me get stability higher faster, and third one to integrate newly conquered locations. Trading income, early game, you want to get gold and silver to your home node, so you, most importantly, can mint efficiently. So that import gives you a lot of money as you're trading inside your market. But then I was also getting some money outside of the fine cloth that I had increased output thanks to the advance. So you can see 1384 map, how also conquering stuff. Mainly uniting the region, going towards forming Tuscany, getting border with Pope, and going slowly north as well with the expansion. I also did manage to diplo-vassalize Perugia. You see the guys over here and here with these locations. I did get them diplo-vassalized, while also conquering Volterra, Siena, Urbino, and here up north also Bologna, which was yet another city. I also did get some interactions with the Peruzzi Bank that is based in Florence. In early game they are in trouble and they're about to pretty much vanish from existence and bankrupt. So I first of all made them my state bank. Not sure really what it gave me. I didn't read too much about it, but I did make them my subjects in a state bank. And I did get events, the dynamic historical events about a choice. Do I want to pay a lot of money to save them, or do I want them to bankrupt and vanish? And I chose to let them bankrupt and vanish because I was too poor at that time. You see, by 1384 I did increase my amount of the pops to 549,000. Of course, the light color, like here in Perugia and Urbino up north, these were my subjects. 21 locations, but the base tax was increasing fast because of my control thingy with the cabinet. Very high income as well and very positive balance, so I could invest a lot. Early game I usually invest a lot into RGOs, but then as you unlock new buildings in your cities, also some buildings in the cities. In Age of Renaissance, which starts in like 10 years in, I did get 2 additional advances for Florence. One is being Florentine School, which is additional possible artist, 5% skill the new artists. Florentine Citizen Militia, which is monthly amateur edition, as well as unlocking a special levy type called Florentine Citizen Militia Levy. That is 2% of your valid pops. And then because of my culture being Tuscan and in Italy, I got 5% research progress as well, 10% income from minting, and actual action to take over loan from of another nation, which I didn't try. Could be actually something fun to try. And some advances, 4 advances from your religion, another one from being Western Europe. That's the same as in my Denmark AAR. I did pick different focus than I did in my previous campaigns. So you remember it was usually admin. I did try Diplo this time, which gave me monthly diplomats, being able to get marches, CP creation speed, a market attraction, maritime advantage, being able to hire privateers, 2 Diplo rep, 20% improved relations, 2.5% subjects income, and 5% war score cost. So it was more focused on general diplomacy, trade, and expansion. I'll also not go deeper how the Catholic works in this game. I explained that in my, again, Danish AAR. There's also a special situation that you get in Italy in early game called Guelphs and Ghibellines. People that are on the side of Pope and people that are on the side of HRE in Italy. But I simply stayed away from this situation, didn't want to be involved in any conflicts regarding it. One of the reasons why my balance and income were pretty nice for my size is not only all that gold, silver I was getting, that was 18 income from it, but also out of tax efficiency. I stacked 30% of it, so I could tax my estates pretty nicely. By 1444, so the start date of EU4, I did get all of these locations. You see I formed Tuscany, which already happened in 1392. It's a bit earlier than this map. Tuscany unlocks, that's also unique. Usually the formable nations don't have many dynamic historical events. Tuscany gives you 27. It also gives you 1, 2, 3, 4 new advances on top of what you had from Florence. 2.5% trade efficiency, 10% max literacy for burghers, plus 1 possible guarantee form, and then 10% max RGO size accompanied by 2 character life expectancy, 10% current power, and 5% market attraction, all in one advance. You see I've got 1.7 million people in this, 59 locations, 850 base tax, and 245 income. But you see my balance was not as good because I was spending a lot of money on buying food for these locations. I had to start organizing it. Everything here were my cores. I did assimilate a lot of cultures, but I also did manage to accept the Emilian and Ligulian cultures. What's important, you see here that I rushed down Genoa because there was one of the 2 markets in the North Italy. One is in Genoa, another one in Venice, just like in EU4, but you also have one in Naples then. So I rushed down Genoa to take over the market, and also have the trade advantage. So my trades are prioritized over everyone else. And that did also help with steadily increasing my trade income. I also did ally France and Hungary to avoid coalition, because I had a lot of the antagonists in the North Italy, especially from Genoa, Milan, Venura, and these 3 were still pretty powerful. Genoa not anymore at this point, but Milan and Verona together were around my strength. I was great power number 20 with all of this, so I was still far away from the... I wasn't great power, okay? I was 20th on the great powers list. I was also creating towns and cities everywhere I could. You know, city needs 30,000 pops, so if it was enough, I was creating it. If not, it was a town. I was just leaving important raw materials like iron, salt, dyes, cotton, and food to be the rural locations. So this way, around that time, I had 11 cities, 24 towns, and 24 rural locations. My third guarantee form was also 20% food production, for that buying food to fix that issue. I was also focusing already on some societal values, as usual, also the decentralization, which gives you proximity cost and the crown power. But in this campaign, I was focusing on capital economy, not traditional economy, which gave me building costs, reduced interest, and increased production efficiency. The production efficiency is a really strong modifier in this game, much stronger than in EU4, but at the cost of reduced food production. So that was one of the sources of my issues, on top of amount of the towns and cities with the food. I was also going towards belligerent, which gives you CB creation speed, reduced antagonists you get from taking lands, and then war score cost, but at the cost of reduced diplomatic reputation. This is how it looked like just 50 years later. You see 3.2 million people, almost 100 locations, 1.1 thousand base tax, 600 income, 300 balance. I fixed the food issue. I was steadily improving everything with high control. So money was also flooding. But you might complain there's a high balance, but I was keeping that. I had around that balance many times later in the game until like late 1600s. So actually they also fixed a bit like how your costs are scaling, and they slowed down how your trade is scaling, at least in my campaigns. Maybe it's just a skill issue. So I also took over the Venetian trade node, and that was mainly to unite the trade in the North Italy. So, you know, all of my lands were under one market. So how I did, I moved the Genoan trade capital from Genoa to Modena. So the location, I think around here. So like central North Italy. And I destroyed the market of Venice at the cost, I think, like 20 stability. So this way, everything here was in one market, also some lands here and some lands in the south Germany. You know, it's mainly for my sake, for just easier management of the trade, because in this campaign I decided to just not leave anything for other automations. I was playing around with the trades all by myself. And I had 134 of trade income, from like 600 of total. It was mainly from taxes still, which was mainly steel, silver, and gold for the same reason as before, but also lots of gems, salt, jewelry, and fine cloth. I was also very much slowed down with the North Italy expansion at this point, because Milan has such a big amount of population and base tax, so taking even a few locations was South Germany being really mad at me. And that's why I started expanding into two Sicilies, which formed. It was not Naples anymore, and you see this land here that I conquered. The first war with two Sicilies was really bloody. They had a generally bigger army than me. I was trying to leverage a bit of standing army combined with my levies to target the right battles in the right provinces and somehow win it. In Age of Discovery, which this was at this point, I got another country advance, which is Uffizi building, that is in the capital and gives you crown power and 0.30 cultural influence. And then another 5 from religion. I'll not go through it again. And I took mill focus this time, and which gave me ship power, galley power, monthly army tradition, navy initiative, high advisor general admiral cost, army maintenance, army morale, navy morale, combat speed, and antagonism received. That was one of the reasons I took it. I was stacking antagonism, from this advance, from the belligerent associated value, and remember, Pope has a papal bull that gives you another minus 20 or 25%. So this way you'll see soon how fast I will expand in South Italy and Central Italy. For two reasons. One, with this stacking, but also simply nobody cared about South Italy. It wasn't as much as base tax as in the North Italy, and it was more far away from the Germans. So the Germans didn't care. Who cared were the Balkans, but it was fine. I didn't care about the Balkans. I completely forgot to mention that, but around that time, in the 1400s, I also got multiple characters from dynamic historical events. You probably know them. Leonardo da Vinci, which was an artist with the artist skill of 97. He, for example, created Mona Lisa. Alessandro Botticelli, that was an artist with the skill of 90. Michelangelo, which was an artist with a skill of 99. Even a courtier, you might have heard of him. What was his name? Machiavelli. So yeah, as you see, that's almost not expanding of Italy at all, just a few locations. It's just going all into the Naples and Papal State, and I could form Italy by 1554. So just like 60 years later than what I just mentioned to you. Forming Italy requires to have 224 locations. And so that's why this was enough. That's more than you need than in EU4 for sure. That of course also meant that it took me more time to integrate stuff, but I was having a lot of cabinet members at this point. So actually only Sicily and a bit of North Italy, a few locations were not integrated at that time, and everything else was cored through assimilating stuff, but also accepting a few main cultures. I became a great power by doing so, number 7. And the trade was split just 2 nodes. North was Modena, south was Naples. Naples was problematic. I took it over, and this lands had huge food issue. Like north, I organized it as like super surplus of the food, but south was buying food a lot and was paying a lot of money for that. I also had very high control in the Tuscany lands. Pope land was a bit lower, but still pretty good. And up around here, mid-north Italy was really high as well because of the rivers. It was pretty low in the south, especially here because of the hills that we have here. These hills here, they slow down the spread of control, especially with the naval spread being nerfed since this patch. I think one of the main issues for the control in Italy is lack of rivers, because you've got one river here and then another one here, and that's it, right? And rivers help a lot spreading control. Anyway, I was also starting making a lot of money from selling books. I was producing it a lot, and whole Europe needed books. They wanted to educate from the Italians, so I was making money on that, on trade. I had 213 of trade income. As you still see how much the net trade income, it was just 213 out of 1.5 thousand of my total income. And you see my balance actually didn't really change, even though I grew my income by 2.5 2.5x. It was also over 3.3 thousand base stacks in 227 locations with 8.7 million people. Fourth guarantee form was for additional tax efficiency, so I had 42% in total already, and I got 4 advances unlocked, not in this age but in general, from forming Italy, one for max literacy and monthly literacy, one for monthly prestige and diploma capacity, then institution cost, and some general merit costs. In Age of Reformation, I had 3 unique advances from the country, that merit cost that I just mentioned, 2.5% trade efficiency, and for the Italian culture I got the unique Galeas ships. Another 2 advances from religion, but I'm not gonna go deeply into it. I took mill focus again, which gave me army tradition, garrison size, siege ability, culture's capacity. That culture's capacity was pretty useful with accepting all of the Italians. Unit food consumption, hostile attrition, naval tradition, supply limit, and 4 defense. I had a lot of cities, a bit of towns, and rural locations again were mostly valuable goods, but mostly food. What's interesting, my capital, so Florence, was carrying 350,000 population and 68 development. Remember, development in this game is up to 100. I'm not gonna even show a new map, because by 1613 I did not expand at all. I just started playing tall, increasing everything you see. I increased my population without expanding by one location by 2 million. My base stacks increased to 5.7 thousand. Income was almost over 2,500 with 420 of balance. And army also didn't really expand that because I wasn't simply fighting anyone. I got my income up to 350. Here I, on top of gold, silver, and books. Of course, I was trading thousands of stuff, but they're much cheaper, in size compared to this. I also started getting saffron. There was a big influx of saffron that I could take from the Middle East and sell it, get it cheap from the Middle East and sell it for a high price in Europe. And I've been using that for a few decades until Europe also started having access to these markets and trade range to get saffron from there and get it themselves. I was top 3 great power, and another note that I think I didn't mention is that I started playing around with. I stacked so much of loyalty of the burghers, it was above 100 when taxing them at maximum I could. The more loyalty the estates have, the bigger chance they're gonna give you build not their estate buildings, but some positive buildings like, RGOs or city buildings. So these goddamn burghers were building a lot for me. Also, most of the roads improvement was coming from them. I also fixed the food issue simply, by stacking food production modifiers and RGOs, even if they didn't bring me much money. Just make sure that food is fixed. So that was great, and no more problems, especially in the Naples node. I was also a bit decided, okay, I've tested Catholic religion, I've tested Lutheran, how about to give Calvinist a chance? So Calvinist works similar to Lutheran, so we have the monthly influence for your religion. There's a few sources of it, like advances, or a few more. You can also get the more clerics are of this religion. The aspects works, I think that's pretty much the same list as the Lutheran. I just didn't see one of the Lutheran in here that was for the antagonism and war score cost. There are different default bonuses that you get as Calvinist, which is clergy satisfaction, discipline, reduced monthly artist chance, increased retreat delay, so you can retreat from the battles 10 hours later than any other nation, and that's a reason for that, and that's a very intelligent reason. The last bonus you get as a Calvinist is called Everything is Preordained. What's the tooltip says in game? Never reroll the d6 in combat. I was thinking what it means. Do you have always a roll 3 in your combat and it's just always like that? No, this is much more interesting. When you get into the battle and you roll for the first time, you keep that roll for the whole battle. You rolled 1? Sorry mate, you're fucked. You rolled 6, let's freaking go, and you have a roll 6 for the whole battle. It's really interesting, I want to see it in the multiplayer. That's why the retreat is delayed, because you can exploit it, right? To your extent by You see a low roll, you just retreat. You see the high roll, you don't retreat. In the last few decades, as you see, I just decided to fix the borders in the north, so it looks more like Italy. It still was really pain, even with like 15% or 20% province war score cost that I stacked. I couldn't take much from Milan, just a few locations usually. But with additional 20 locations and just simply increase of population, I got my population up to 14.5 million. Base tax 15,000. You see, in that age you increase your economy really fast. If you know all the workshops being unlocked, but also the income 7,000, and my balance was also insane. That's not only workshops, but also in general better roads and proximity cost modifiers you unlock in Age of Absolutism. So all this together did give me a lot of more of control of my lands. I had 110 cities, 50 towns and 88 rural locations. Florence, my capital, had 745,000 people with 89 development. I was second great power, and my trade income from the 7,000 was just 700. So I was steadily increasing that, but it wasn't that easy. And it was not gold and silver anymore. It was mostly books, saffron, and then split of many goods being traded a little bit. I unlocked 3 new guarantee forms in that age, one for 10% raw materials output, another one for 10% tax efficiency, and another one for max literacy. 61% of the population were Tuscan, and 80% were Calvinists, so I spent also a lot of time getting everyone converted and assimilated. I stacked a lot of literacy sources. 77.5% average literacy in these lands, over 90% in the cities and towns, which gave me 3.1 monthly research. The moment I finished this campaign, they released that final patch, which is actually interesting news. What they changed, they finally nerfed. That was something that I was asking for a long time. I'm waiting for that standard comment. Oh, they are breaking the game because of the whining influencers. I asked nicely because I thought it was too OP, because so far each one of development gave 1 proximity cost from that location to another, which was OP if you, especially in late game, and that's one of the reasons why I could get 90-ish average proximity in my India round, when most of the stuff was at 100. Here it was at 80 at average, with the same stuff stacked. What they changed, it was not 1 development, 1 proximity cost, but 5 development being 1 proximity cost. So at the max, development gets 20 proximity cost, which is still decent from high development, but it's not as game breaking as it was previously. In that age, I had 4 interesting situations. First of all, Little Ice Age, which makes your locations suffer with lower food production, but also lots of the events, especially with negative food and other impact on your locations. There was a religious war, which was saddened because I couldn't join it. Only HRE members could do so. I would have to ally one of the leaders of the religious war to be involved. But I think it really happened. It was there, the situation, but the war didn't declare. There was Columbian exchange, so you can get old world goods to the new world, or new world goods to the old world. So this way I could get Chile, and I did get 4 of my locations produced chili, which then I could sell at a very high price to the Europeans. And finally there was court and country, and we can choose between the 2 associated values, absolutism and liberalism. I mentioned that one of my other AARs, I think Indian one, that absolutely doesn't feel like it is worth it. You need to destroy your country to get it, and it doesn't give you really strong bonuses. So I went for liberalism, which just required me to have high liberalism associated value, which is from the events, and simply high loyalty of all of the estates. And this way, with high liberalism at 100, I was getting 5% estate satisfaction, 20% cultures capacity, and minus 10% parliament issue support needed. So to press an issue in the parliament, I needed 40%, not 50%. But yeah, this is it. It was a very fun campaign. I think in my ranking it was number 2 after India. So far India was my favorite, Italy second, third was the Ottomans, and fourth was Scandinavia. And as mentioned, I already have the final access to the game, so I don't think I'll be recording any new AARs before the EU5 release. I'll be more focusing on covering the stuff from the Tinto Talks, like how easy it is to learn the game. When I saw that one of the last Tinto Talks, or content for Poland. And I'm gonna already start recording my final stuff for the release of EU5. All of the guides and gameplays, including the gameplay for the Ottomans that I already mentioned. I hope that you guys did enjoy this video. If you want to get notified about that huge influx of EU5 content that I'm preparing, make sure to subscribe to the channel if you don't yet, because I know half of you don't subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'm gonna see you soon. Bye!